All right, class. Greetings and welcome to week number 4. That is right, week number 4 of your 9407 class, which is your intellectual freedom class. As always, I'm your professor, Dr. J.C.K. Austin. And what we are going to do this week, this should be one that's a little bit on the shorter side as far as check-in videos, because there's not really a whole lot to talk about. You all are doing a fine job. I've gotten through all of the discussion board postings for week 3 when we talked about our first half of excuse me for a second. Sorry, there's a family of deer that live near my house in my backyard, and I see the fawn out grazing, or one of the fawns. There are 2 fawns. I see one of the fawns out grazing, but I don't see the other fawn or the mother, so I'm a little concerned about the fawn being out there by herself. I believe it's a girl. But anyway, sorry for that distraction. Hopefully she'll be okay, but let me get back to this. So yeah, what we're talking about this week, first of all, I will again say that you all did very well as far as discussing the First Amendment exemptions, obscenity, child pornography, obscenity, child pornography, and then also fighting words. Those are First Amendment exemptions that I think are actually a little more surprising to students than the First Amendment exemptions that we'll be talking about this week, which are defamation, blackmail, and incitement into lawless action. So that's what you'll be reading and learning about this week. And I don't think any of you are going to be surprised by those, whereas I do think that there was some surprise among you all that obscenity and fighting words were exempt from First Amendment protections. But I think everybody pretty much already knows and has an understanding of why defamation, blackmail, and incitement into lawless action are not First Amendment protected. So we've got some court cases we're going to learn about. Also, James Rich had some pretty good insights on both lawless action and on defamation and libel tourism, and you're going to learn what libel tourism is this week as well. So we've got some things. We're going to continue on with our First Amendment exemptions this week, and then we're also going to get ready for next week when we're going to be speaking on hate speech and the fact that hate speech is not First Amendment exempt, which means that it does have First Amendment protections, which, again, I've said several times in this course, and we'll say several more. But please know, again, this is something that, for some reason, a lot of librarians do not know, and I do feel that there is, without naming names, there's a library school out there that is teaching people that hate speech is unprotected, and that library school is wrong. But having said that, let's go ahead and also remove some of these here so we can see what is coming up. So yeah, you're going to have a discussion prompt related to defamation and blackmail and incitement into lawless action this week. You're also going to, next week, have your First Amendment exam. It's going to be open book. I do want to make that clear, and I'll probably actually put it in the body of an announcement next week. But yes, the First Amendment examination, for those of you who are kind of worried, who see that and are kind of worried, please know it's not that big a deal. It is open book. What you can do is you can have a tab open with the like a browser tab with the quiz going on, and then you can open up a second browser tab and you can Google the answers. I really don't care. I just want you all to show some sort of mastery of this information that has been provided to you thus far in the class. So yes, it'll be open book. You don't have to bother with the lockdown browser or anything like that. Really, I just want to make sure that you all understand the material. And I do think that if you Google the answers and find it, that will still jolt you into being reminded of the answer, and it may help you retain it from here on out. So yes, the First Amendment examination is going to be due a week from this coming Sunday. That's worth 7 points. It's pretty easy. And it's open book. You'll also have your hate speech module your hate speech module and discussion prompt that's due a week from this Sunday. But this Sunday is when the defamation, blackmail, and incitement into lawless action is going to be due. And then when it comes to class attendance on the 26th, we're going to have Leanne Lord, who is a professional stand-up comedian. She's going to be with us that night, and she's going to talk about intellectual freedom within comedy, because I personally, and you're free to disagree with me, in fact, the disagreement is welcome here. because my belief here isn't very popular, but in my belief, even though I'm not a First Amendment, well, not a First Amendment, even though I'm not a free speech purist, let me put it that way. I was about to say First Amendment purist. Even though I'm not a free speech purist, I am somebody who still believes that when it comes to comedy, either everything is okay to joke about or nothing is, which is the South Park approach, and not really the approach that you see from I'm what they call a geriatric millennial. I'm an older millennial, but from millennials and Gen Z, you typically don't see that position of either everything is okay to joke about or nothing is. I think that that is something that is more of a boomer and Gen X mindset, but it's my mindset as well. So I really think that comedy is an area that freedom of speech needs to be approached from a different angle. And I know a lot of people will flip it back at me because I've liked some controversial comedy in my past. I think that, you know, as long as you are saying stuff that is funny, it doesn't matter, you know, as far as I don't feel that you need to preserve people's feelings when it comes to actual like stand-up comedy or entertainment that is meant to be entertainment. In other words, like if people actually pay to go into a venue and watch a comedy special, you know, to me, that's different than your coworker who's not a comedian just saying a stupid ass joke. I really think that if somebody is an actual entertainer, or, you know, if you're actually, for instance, deciding to turn on a TV program that you know is a comedic and controversial TV program, like maybe The Simpsons or Family Guy or South Park, then those Beavis and Butthead, those types of things. I think that when you are entering those realms, if you enter a realm where you should realistically expect for controversial comedy to happen and it happens, I don't think that you should really, I don't know, I don't think that you should really be upset about that because you should have some sense of what you're getting into. And so I do think, again, I think that professional comedy and professional entertainment is different from, you know, just some idiot saying some stupid joke and thinking that they're being funny or clever when they're not. And yes, so I've had people kind of direct that at me and be like, okay, so would you be okay with a white comedian making black jokes? My thing is, if the shit is funny, it's funny. I don't know what else to say. I have laughed at at black jokes told by white comedians. Yes, I've also laughed at the white jokes told by black comedians. But I'm just saying, if it's funny, it's funny, you know, but the issue for me is sometimes a lot of black jokes are just lazy. Like, what do you call a black doctor in a suit? An N-word. I've heard that joke from several white people and they thought that shit was funny. And I was like, no, boo. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, all of that to say, yes, I think that the comedy, that having a stand-up comedian come in and talk about intellectual freedom and comedy can be very beneficial for a class like this. And then also, again, our final module is going to be dealing with intellectual freedom and comedy. But going back to the modules of what we've got going on this week, again, we're talking about defamation, we're talking about blackmail and incitement into lawless action. And so we've got some court cases that, some case law that actually shows why these things are, how these things lost their First Amendment protections, and also what actually counts as defamation in some of these as well. Because Husser v. Falwell is actually a very, very interesting court case. And if you all are familiar with the Falwell family, with the Falwells and what they believe in, and then what Hustler magazine did to Jerry, it may strike some of you. It may be offensive, but I do think that if it is that offensive and it gets a rise out of you, then you can come back to the table and you can either in the module, in the discussion prompt itself, or in the free-for-all section, or wherever you think is appropriate, you can talk about any of that. You can talk a little bit more about Hustler v. Falwell or any of the content or anything I say in this video. You know, that's what the free-for-all section is absolutely for. But yeah, when I reviewed the the situation regarding Hustler v. Falwell, I was like, wow, that's really funny and really devastating at the same time. And I can understand why Falwell wanted to sue, but I also think that it is good to have, um, I think it's good to make it so that public figures are not as able to sue for defamation and those types of things as private individuals are. I think that that is necessary, and I like that that is how we have operated as a country for the past few decades. So that's what we've got there. As far as me just kind of soapboxing a little bit this week, because you know I do that all the time, I do want to, probably a lot of you are already familiar with this. This is an intellectual freedom issue that happened outside of libraries. And when you do your letter assignment, you can do something related to this if you want as well, or something similar to this. So it won't actually have to be libraries. But I do want to talk about a newspaper being raided in Kansas. You all know I'm in Missouri. And I'm in Kansas City, so I'm near Kansas. And a lot of my students are from Kansas. So I'm going to talk about the situation that happened in Marion, Kansas a few weeks ago. And just, again, soapbox a little bit and just give some preliminary thoughts I have on that. That should be probably 5 to 10 minutes. So this should be a 20-minute check-in video, and I hope you sped it up. Give me one more pause. Okay, so the situation that we've got going on over in Marion, Kansas, or that we had going on over in Marion, Kansas. I'm going to pull up a few news reports about it and then tell you in a nutshell what happened. But for the sake of keeping this video fairly brief, like 20 minutes, I guess that's not really brief, but again, I hope you sped it up. But in order to not make it go too long, I am going to encourage you that if you want to learn more about what happened here, all you really need to do is Google Marion, Kansas newspaper raid, and a whole lot of stuff is going to come out. Okay. So, basically what happened here was, in a nutshell, you had a former, Kansas City, Missouri, police officer, his name was Gideon Cody, I believe. And Cody was hired to be the chief of police for Marion, Kansas, for their municipal police department. Cody had some issues with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, and after this raid happened, the Kansas City Star did some investigative reporting on him and his time with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. It was not good. Okay, so anyway, Cody, basically you can get the sense that Cody was somebody who would abuse power. And so when Cody became the chief of police over here in this small town in Kansas, and I used to be a small town reporter, so I know, these deals get done under the table in small towns just like they do in big cities, and maybe even more so because fewer people are watching in small towns. I know all about that. And small town press a lot of times doesn't have the same type of power that big city press and media has, but thankfully you can have entities like the Associated Press come and help all newspapers of all different sizes. And so that's something that we relied on in the news field when I was working in news many, many, many years ago. But yes, so Cody became the chief of police for this small town newspaper. The small town newspaper was investigating a local business owner who had some, apparently like some DUI sorts of things that were swept under the rug, or something mysterious happened with the DUI stuff. And that's something you can read about. The newspaper was doing its own investigation about it, and the Marion, Kansas Police Department, along with 2 deputies from the county sheriff's office, came in and raided the newspaper, took things, and then also raided the home of the newspaper publisher, which really, and you can find video of this out there too. There's surveillance video of this that I saw a few weeks ago. They actually raided the publisher's home, and the publisher's 98-year-old grandmother, 98-year-old mother was there, and she naturally was just very distraught over these police invading her space and taking items from her home, and she actually died the next day. And I would say personally that maybe this is going too far, and maybe I can get in trouble for saying this, but I think the Marion, Kansas Police Department had something to do with her death. I think that stressing out this 98-year-old woman like this with this unmerited raid to try to protect this local business owner was something. If that woman would not have died the next day normally, then yes, I think that the actions of the police had a factor in her death. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there like that. All right. So that happened. They raided the newspaper. They raided the publisher's home. They took things that they should not have taken. They made digital copies of some things that they took, and were apparently also not allowed to do that, or it wasn't maybe ethical or right for them to do that, even though the sheriff's office did later decide that they were going to destroy the things that they made copies of after raiding the newspaper. But after this raid happened, CNN got involved, the Associated Press got involved, the Kansas City Star and the Wichita Eagle, I believe. They all did an assload of stories about this, thankfully, and really, really dug into it. And what they did was good, and I know why they did it. You know, it's they came to the aid of this small town newspaper that was raided and basically had bully tactics used against them by law enforcement. They came to their aid because if you let this happen in one place, if you as the press let this happen in one place, it can start happening everywhere. These cops consider themselves a big fraternity, thin blue line and all of that. And when you have cops abuse their power and get away with it in a small town, they're going to do it in other small towns, and then they're going to do it in little cities, and then they're going to do it in big cities, and so forth and so on. And so I say all that to say that this is an intellectual freedom issue outside of libraries, because we do need to have a society where the press, an American society, where the press can do investigations without being bullied or threatened or interfered with by law enforcement. And what is happening, I believe, and this is why I think it's good that all of this reporting about police abuse is happening now, because police abuse has always happened. It was happening when I was a little kid, and I came from a black community where we talked about it openly. But, you know, I would encounter white people who just decided that no, the police don't abuse their power. That's not what happens. Black people just don't obey the rules. I heard that many times from white people I encountered. And especially when I got to college, because again, I grew up in a predominantly black area, but there were always some white kids at my schools as well. And then I went to a really, really white school for undergrad. And so I say that, you know, there has always been, up until recently, there's always been, I think, black and brown people who realized that not all cops were good. And then a lot of white people who felt that they were protected by cops and would always give the cops this benefit of the doubt, and would always assume that in situations where there was alleged police abuse, we have to talk about what the people that the police abused, what they did to bring it on themselves. That was the approach that I got from a lot of white people. Okay, just to keep it real. And so I'm glad that that paradigm has kind of shifted, definitely within the last 5 years. But I would say even since I know that George Zimmerman was not a police officer. But I think that really I started seeing things change on this once the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin thing happened in Florida, which I think was back in 2011. Then I really started to see some people questioning, okay, are black people actually getting profiled when they are in places they're supposed to be? We've been telling y'all that since before the 1970s, but thankfully now in 2011, people decided they would start listening. And, you know, there's been more of a buildup. And what I would say is black media and black press and black television outlets and black entertainment has always talked about police abuse. But it didn't become credible until white people said, oh, yes, it's happening. Once white news outlets said it was happening, then white people were like, oh, the black people aren't making this shit up. So I'm going to go back to that and just say that, yes, cops abuse their power. I'm actually not anti-cop. It might sound like I'm anti-cop given what I've been saying, but I'm not defund the police. I'm not abolish the police. And so I'm not those things, but I still have this very complicated view of policing because I know that police abuse power, and it falls on deaf ears when police abuse power against Black people up until recently. But I think that police abuses against the media still fall on deaf ears, and the reason for that is because people despise the media. They might like pundits who spit stuff out that they agree with. So people might like Rachel Maddow or Tucker Carlson or whoever because they agree with those people are saying. But when it comes to the mainstream media and people being reporters, people despise reporters. They think that reporters are bottom feeders and that sort of thing and just want to make money off the world's misery. And cops, up until very recently, had a lot of public will behind them because of what we in my community call propaganda, because that was flowing so much and it's convinced so many people that cops are just the greatest thing since sliced bread and they keep us all safe and they investigate all crimes and this, that, and the other stuff that when you come from working class or poor, and I didn't grow up poor, I grew up working class, but still working class or poor communities, we know better. But especially when you're in the trenches of suburbia and and things are middle class and police are actually out there solving petty crimes to keep suburbanites safe and happy, then you end up with people who don't realize that the cops are human, and so there are good ones and bad ones wherever you go. Anyway, I want to bring that all back to say that we as intellectual freedom advocates should not just confine ourselves to intellectual freedom advocacy within libraries, museums, and archives, and galleries, or GLAM as we call it. We should also be intellectual freedom advocates for free speech on campus, I think, for intellectual freedom in comedy, and certainly also for a free press. When stuff like this happens, we as librarians, I believe, even need to be involved in calling out what the police have done, saying that it is an abuse of power, saying that this will not be tolerated, and saying that the free flow of information is critical to the optimal operation of a democratic republic, which we are. Okay? And a few other things came out of the reporting, and very good reporting going on here with this. They really dug. And so we found that the magistrate judge who signed off on this search warrant allowing the raid, an illegal raid, federal law makes this raid illegal, and you can read up on that. But the judge who signed off on it, she was somebody who also apparently had DUIs just disappear. So how about that? That's quite a coincidence there. And so you can read up on her, and now even more. This actually just came out not in August, but a couple days ago. And so this is another thing that we are seeing, that this judge who signed off on the raid, corrupt. And that's something that you see a lot of times when DAs and judges and paramedics and the press are too chummy with the police, corruption happens. That's just something that goes on. And so, yes, I think the police have had a contentious relationship with libraries as of late. And there was one sheriff's office in Nevada that said, okay, if y'all are going to be talking about Black Lives Matter, that is offensive to us, that Black Lives Matter. And so don't call us when you have an emergency. Now, the sheriff of that county, after the deputies started saying that, the sheriff was like, no, we'll still respond to library incidents. But I'm just saying that, we do have an uphill battle, because when we advocate for intellectual freedom, often we are not the ones with the guns, and we're not the ones who have the judges on our side. Those are usually the people who actually conduct the raids and do this type of thing to suppress intellectual freedom and freedom of speech and freedom of information. Okay, so we still have to be advocates for this, because yes, if they come after newspapers, then a lot of the information that we provide to our patrons is information that that was first discovered from the news media. Okay. And so I'm going to leave it there because I did go over 20 minutes. I'm at 25 minutes. I apologize for that. But there was just a lot that I felt that should be said. I felt that this was noteworthy to bring into this class. And if you have any thoughts, you can definitely hit up the discussion board prompt that's the free for all and chime in there, or you can inbox me if you want, or whatever you wish to do. But having said that, I am Dr. Jace, and I believe that this class is going at a good pace. I'm very pleased with what you all have done so far. Keep it up, and hopefully you all will enjoy this class throughout the duration of the semester. But that's it for me, and we will see you next week with another check-in video. Bye-bye.